They say the river remembers. Not the way people do, not in photos, not in words. The river remembers in silence, in echoes, in the way the current shifts when someone it once claimed is spoken of again. In a village tucked deep within the folds of the old land, beneath the thick breath of the African forest, lived a girl named Zawadi. Her name meant gift, and truly, that's what she was. To her parents, to her people, to anyone who ever saw the way she smiled. But in places where the sun shines too long on one flower, shadows begin to gather. There were others. Girls with eyes like mirrors, smooth on the surface, but hiding quiet storms underneath. They smiled when Zawadi smiled. But not all smiles mean peace. Not all friendships are made of kindness. And not all rivers let you cross without consequence. This is not just a tale about envy, or about magic, or about the dark depths of the water. This is a tale about love, the kind that walks across death itself. So listen closely, because some truths don't come to you in thunder. Some truths arrive quietly, with bare feet, by the riverbank, long before the world had wires, before maps carved borders through land and kin. There was a village hidden in the arms of the trees. Its name was Bantu, a place where drums spoke before words did, where firelight danced on the faces of elders, and stories were passed down through the rhythm of breath. In Bantu, nothing was rushed. The people woke with the sun, slept by the moon, and lived as one with the land that birthed them. They grew their food in red soil, sang to their goats as they grazed, and thanked the spirits each night with a bowl of sweet brew. And in this village, small, warm, and woven in tradition, lived a girl named Zawadi. Her name meant gift. She was no princess. Her family didn't own land beyond the garden behind their hut. But she carried something rarer than gold. Kindness, the kind that showed up before you needed it. She knew when the old baker's knees hurt, and would carry his flour sack before he even asked. She knew which children were too shy to speak, and found ways to make them laugh anyway. Zawadi had a smile that felt like morning, and laughter that never made others feel small. The village loved her, truly loved her. But the thing about love is, it doesn't always spread evenly. While most offered her blessings, there were 3 girls, Nia, Pendo, and Malaika, who watched from the shadows. Their faces wore friendship like a borrowed cloth, colorful on the outside, but never warm. They laughed with Zawadi. They walked beside her. But in their hearts, they were planting something else, something sour, something that waits. Because even in a village like Bantu, under skies so honest and open, jealousy has a way of slipping in, like a snake in the grass. Quiet, patient, deadly. In Bantu, time moved with meaning. Every moon had its purpose. Every shadow had a name. And once each year, when the rains had passed and the earth smelled rich and full, the village came alive for the festival of the ancestors. It wasn't just a celebration. It was a calling, a time when drums spoke the language of the dead, when masks were carved to honor spirits, and food was laid out not just for the living, but for those who had gone before. The elders would say, "If your heart is clean, the spirits will dance with you." And oh, how Zawadi wanted to dance. Her eyes sparkled at the thought of it. The fire, the colors, the sounds, the stories rising like smoke into the night sky. But her parents were cautious. The festival this year was to be held in a neighboring village across the river Mzimu. And the river was no ordinary path. It was old, sacred, and it did not forgive those who crossed it without permission. "No, Zawadi," her mother had said, her voice steady but kind. "The spirits do not speak to all with mercy. You will stay home this year." Her father had agreed, placing his heavy hand on her shoulder. "We leave to visit your aunt in Kivu. While we're gone, honor our word. Stay home." Zawadi had nodded. She always obeyed. But the seed had been planted, and the next morning, as she swept the dusty path in front of their hut, they came, Nia, Pendo, Malaika, all smiles, all sugar. "Zawadi!" Nia beamed, her voice syrupy. "You're coming to the festival with us, right?" Zawadi looked down. brushing a curl from her face. "I want to, but my parents said no, it's across the river." Pendo pouted, putting a hand on her hip. "Oh, come on. We'll help you finish your chores. They'll never know." Malika leaned in close, her voice soft like silk. "It's just one day, one dance. Don't you want to feel alive for once?" Zawadi hesitated. Her heart pulled in two directions, between obedience and longing was louder. "All right," she whispered, "but we finish everything first." And so they did, or at least, they pretended to. They laughed, they swept, they gathered wood and water, all while their smiles hid a darker rhythm beneath. Because this wasn't about friendship, this was a setup. They knew what she didn't. They knew that on the way back, the river would ask for something, and if Zawadi had nothing to give, the river would take instead. The path from Bantu to the neighboring village twisted like an old scar through the land. It wasn't far, but distance in Africa is never measured in miles. It's measured in songs sung, feet walked, and the silence between drum beats. Zawadi had never left the boundaries of Bantu. Her life had been shaped by the shape of her mother's arms, the scent of cassava on the fire, and the rhythm of prayers whispered beneath banana trees. But now she was stepping into the unknown. Nia, Pendo, and Malika walked ahead of her, their laughter light, their eyes sharper than they let on. "We'll get there before sundown," Nia called back, her voice floating like a leaf. Zawadi smiled, clutching her basket, unaware that the real journey hadn't even begun yet. After an hour of walking through open fields and whispering grass, they reached it. The river Mzimu. It lay across the path like a warning, wide, silent, dark as midnight secrets. No birds sang above it. No insects danced near its banks. It was as if the air itself held its breath. Zawadi paused. Something in her chest tightened. "Why is it so quiet?" she asked, more to herself than to the others. Pendo stepped onto the rocks that jutted out across the water. "It's just a river, Zawa. Nothing to fear." Malika smiled back at her, but there was something hollow in it. "We've crossed it before. You'll be fine." What they didn't say was that every time they crossed this river, they brought an offering. A piece of bread, a fruit, something. Because the river had rules. It belonged to a spirit older than the village itself. A mermaid bound by bitterness, who waited in the deep for anyone foolish enough to forget her. "She takes what is not given freely," the elders would whisper. "And when she takes, she does not return." But Zawadi, she had never heard that tale. Her feet touched the first stone, then the second. The river did not stir. The sky above was cloudless, and yet the wind carried a chill. She made it across, just as they all did. On the other side, the land opened up like a celebration. Music echoed from beyond the trees. Smoke from roasted maize danced in the air. Laughter rose like fireworks. Zawadi's face lit up. She was here. For the first time in her life, she was more than just the village girl with chores. She was a guest, a girl on the edge of wonder, and she had no idea that the river behind her was already counting. The village across the river was nothing like Bantu. Where Bantu whispered, this place sang. Where Bantu prayed in low voices, this village shouted its joy into the sky. Colors draped every doorway. Reds, yellows, greens so bright they burned against the earth. Children wore beads in their hair. Men beat drums with hands calloused by harvest and celebration. The festival of the ancestors had begun, and Zawadi had never seen anything like it. Smoke from roasting goat meat curled into the air like perfume. Women stirred pots of plantain stew and handed out honeyed yams wrapped in banana leaves. Everywhere she turned, people smiled. But it wasn't just the food or the music or the warmth, it was the freedom. For the first time, she wasn't the good girl from Bantu. She was simply a girl, alive in a story bigger than her own. Nia, Pendo, and Malika walked beside her, but they no longer looked pleased, because something had changed. The eyes that used to flicker toward them were now fixed on Zawadi. The boys noticed her, not just for her beauty, but for something softer, something gentler. She didn't try to shine, she simply did. And then, he appeared. Ayo. tall, with skin like carved mahogany, and eyes that seemed to carry stories of their own. He wasn't dressed like a prince, but he moved like one, and when he saw Zawadi, he stopped. "You're not from here," he said, his voice smooth as riverstone. Zawadi turned, shy. "No, I'm from Bantu, across the water. I've never seen the river send anyone so radiant." Io smiled, then held out his hand. "May I show you around?" Her heart fluttered. She glanced at her friends. 3 fake smiles. "All right," she said softly. And just like that, the fracture began. Io took her through the heart of the festival. They tried spicy corn, listened to griots sing stories of warriors and wind. He made her laugh, really laugh, and all the while behind her, 3 shadows watched. Their hands clenched tighter with every glance Io gave her. "She acts like a queen," Naya muttered. "Like this was her festival," Pendo added, eyes sharp. Malika didn't speak, but her stare burned hotter than fire. They hadn't brought her here to shine. They'd brought her to disappear. And now, their plan would need adjusting. As the sun began to bleed behind the trees, the drums faded to echoes. One by one, the fires dimmed. The dancers slowed, and Zawadi, still smiling, turned to her friends. "We should go. My parents, they'll be worried." Nia nodded. "Yes, let's get you home." Her voice was smooth, too smooth, the kind of calm that comes just before a storm. They walked in silence, the laughter of the festival now far behind them. Zawadi clutched her empty hands. Her heart was light, still full of music and roasted maize. But the girls were carrying something else, hidden in their wraps. Small pieces of fried yam, dried fruit, a crust of bread. Offerings, not for Zawadi, for the river. For the one who waited beneath. The river Mzimu came into view. Dark and still as glass, Zawadi stepped forward and stopped. "It looks different at night," she whispered. Malika shrugged. "It's just water." Pendo moved first. She bent near the edge and placed a small banana leaf on the stone. An offering, barely visible in the dying light. Nia did the same. Malika too. Zawadi looked down at her hands. Empty. What are you doing?" she asked. Nia didn't look back. "You didn't bring anything?" "I didn't know I needed to." Her voice cracked. Can I have a little from one of you?" Silence. Then laughter, quiet, sharp, cruel. Pendo stepped closer, her tone suddenly cold. "It's not our job to take care of you, Zawa." "Maybe next time," Malika added, arms crossed. "If there is a next time," Nia whispered. And just like that, they crossed, one by one. The stones barely made a sound beneath their feet. Zawadi stood alone, on the wrong side of the river, her heart pounding like a drum out of rhythm. The wind shifted. The air grew colder. The water rippled. And then, she heard it, a voice. Not loud, not angry, just ancient and tired. "Where's your offering, child?" Zawadi spun around. From the black depths of the river, a woman rose. Her skin shimmered like wet obsidian. Her eyes glowed like forgotten moons. Her hair floated around her like seaweed, moving in a current that didn't exist. I didn't know," Zawadi whispered. "Ignorance," the mermaid said, "is not immunity." The water surged. Zawadi tried to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The river held her, not with hands, but with weight, guilt, trust, and betrayal. "Please," Zawadi begged, her voice trembling. "They didn't tell me. I didn't mean to disrespect you." The mermaid tilted her head. "Yet you crossed. You walked on my back and brought me nothing but footsteps." And then, she reached out. Cold fingers wrapped around Zawadi's ankle. And the water rose. Fast, hungry, final. Zawadi screamed. But the sound never reached the trees. Only the river heard. Only the river remembered. The next morning, the birds sang like they always did. The smoke rose from cooking fires. Children fetched water. And in the village of Bantu, a mother woke up without knowing her heart was about to break. She and her husband returned from Kivu early. The journey shorter than expected. They expected to see their daughter, maybe asleep by the fire, or sweeping the yard with her humming voice. But the house, it was quiet. Too quiet. The broom untouched. The water pot still full. The fire cold. Her mother called out. Once, twice, then louder. But no answer came. Just the wind, just the silence. And that's when the fear crept in. They searched the village, first calmly, then frantically. Neighbors shook their heads. No one had seen Zawadi, not since the day before. Then, someone mentioned the festival. I thought I saw her near the river, with Naya and the other two. Her mother's knees nearly gave. Her father's jaw tightened. They marched to the village square, where the three girls sat beneath a tree, laughing over roasted ground nuts. Where is she? Her mother's voice cracked like dried wood. Nia blinked, too calm. She was with us, but she stayed behind at the festival. Pendo nodded. She said she wanted to dance more. We thought she'd catch up. Malaika said nothing, just stared past them. But the lie was too smooth, too ready. Her mother's hands shook. No, she wouldn't do that, not alone, not after we told her. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her before she collapsed. Around them, the villagers gathered, concern rising. Zawadi was not a child who vanished. She was the girl who greeted elders by name. The girl who left flowers at the feet of the village shrine. She did not disobey. She did not disappear. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a voice, old and raspy, spoke. Search the river. An elder stepped forward, his eyes clouded, but his spirit sharp. Mzimu does not take without reason, and when it does, it leaves ripples behind. Some nodded, some whispered. The parents ran, and as they approached the banks of the river, they saw nothing. No sign, no footprints, just the still, dark surface. And then a sound, soft, weak, a flutter. In the bushes, a parrot, its feathers ruffled, its wing crooked. And when it opened its beak, it sang. But not a song of joy, a song of memory, of betrayal. Line by line, in broken notes and trembling tones, the parrot sang what it had seen. The girls, the offerings, the refusal, the scream, the hand, the silence. Zawadi's mother fell to her knees. Her father stared at the bird, his face stone. I saw it, the parrot whispered, voice shaking like a dying flame. I saw it all, but there may still be time. If you're willing to cross. And just like that, the river had spoken, not with thunder, but with truth. And the silence was broken. They stood at the river's edge, two parents with nothing but a name on their lips and fire in their hearts. Zawadi. Her mother clutched a scarf still scented with wood smoke and jasmine. Her father's hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage and love. The parrot fluttered to a branch above, broken wing tucked close. She's down there, it said, voice barely louder than a breath. Serving the one who waits, but she's not beyond saving. The villagers gathered, a quiet crowd of heartbeats and held breath. What must we do? The father asked. Not to the bird, but to the water, as if the river itself would answer. And it did. The wind rose, gentle at first, then stronger. The trees leaned, the grass flattened. And from the river, a voice, ancient, tired, and terrible. If your love is true, then prove it. Cross me, without bridge, without boat, without bargain, walk, or drown. Some gasped, others wept. But Zawadi's parents didn't flinch. Her mother stepped first, barefoot, wrapped in fabric faded by time and tears. Her father followed, steady as the sun. The water touched their toes. It was cold. Then their ankles, their knees. The current pulled, but they didn't stop. Zawadi! The mother cried, her voice breaking into the wind. Child of my womb, daughter of my spirit, we come for you. The river surged, but they pressed forward. The villagers began to chant, prayers, names of ancestors. Tendai, Mwamba, Lumo, protect them. The water reached their chests. Then a shift, a wind, not from earth, wrapped around them. Warm, alive, as if the souls of those long gone were walking with them. Step by step, carried not by strength, but by something deeper, something holy. And then they reached the other side, soaked, shaking, but standing. The river stilled, the wind fell silent, and from the center of the water she rose. The mermaid, skin like midnight, eyes like galaxies, in her arms, Zawadi, pale, empty-eyed, her smile gone, her light dimmed. She crossed without offering, the mermaid said. She belongs to me now, The mother fell to her knees. "Please, she is our only child. Take our lives if you must, but let her go." The mermaid paused, watched, and then she closed her eyes. For the first time in centuries, something cracked. Not in the water, not in the air, but in her heart. She looked at them. Two trembling humans soaked in love. "You walked across death itself," she whispered. For her, she lifted Zawadi in both arms. "Then she is yours again." And with that, she let go. Zawadi blinked. Her lips trembled. "Mama?" Her mother screamed and ran, not in fear, in joy. They fell into each other's arms, wet, shaking, alive. The villagers on the far bank roared. The wind returned, soft this time, carrying a different kind of song. A song of love, a song of return, a song that even the river could not silence. Nia, Pendo, and Malaika had returned to Bantu as if nothing had happened. Their laughter was louder than usual, their smiles wider. They helped sweep the square, shared mangoes with neighbors, even placed flowers at the village altar. And yet, none of it washed the blood off their hands. Not that kind of blood, the blood of betrayal. At first it seemed their plan had worked. Zawadi was gone. And in her absence they bloomed, or so they thought. Boys who once looked past them now lingered. Elders who once praised Zawadi now offered them smiles. They wore her disappearance like perfume. Subtle, but present. But then came the whispers. The parrot, the river, the walk, and finally, the return. One by one, villagers heard what had happened. How the parents had crossed the river with nothing but faith. How the mermaid, known for her wrath, had let go. Not for gold, not for prayer, but for love. Then came the bird, perched on the altar wall, singing. Not just any song, a confession. In broken melody, it told the story of 3 girls. Of food hoarded, of pleas ignored, of a friend left to drown. The village listened, and something shifted. The same eyes that once looked at Naya, Pendo, and Malaika with admiration, now narrowed, now whispered. And soon, the king summoned them. His hut was made of stone and stories. And inside it, the truth always echoed louder than lies. The girls stood before him, heads bowed. Zawadi sat quietly in the corner, flanked by her parents. Her skin was pale, her smile not yet returned. But her eyes burned with something new. Not hate, but knowing. "You left her to die," the king said. His voice was deep, not loud, but final. "You did not kill her with weapons, but with choice." The girls began to weep. "It was a joke. We didn't think. She was always so perfect." But no one listened. Not anymore. The village had listened to them long enough. Now they listened to the truth. "Your punishment," the king said, rising, "is not death. It is removal." The words hit harder than any blow. "You will be exiled from Bantu, stripped of name, stripped of family. You will walk the forest until it forgets you." The crowd was silent. Not one voice raised in protest. The girls collapsed in tears, but mercy had long gone. And as they were led from the village, barefoot, broken, bare, the drums began to beat, not for mourning, but for return, for Zawadi, for the girl who had faced death and come back, for the truth that even rivers remember, and so do people. A few days had passed. The village had returned to rhythm, pounding fufu, boiling cassava, the slow dance of ordinary life. But Zawadi's heart still beat to another drum. Each night, she woke with the feeling of water in her lungs, not from drowning, but from remembering. The river had taken something from her and given it back. But some things, once touched by darkness, never return untouched. One morning, before the sun had fully opened its eyes, Zawadi walked alone. No basket, no shoes, just an offering. A bowl of ground nuts and a single white flower. She stopped at the edge of the Mumzimu River, its waters still and deep like sleep. "Great spirit of the water," she whispered. "I came with nothing once, but today, I come with thanks." The wind stirred, and the surface rippled. From the center rose the mermaid, slower this time, softer. Her hair fell in waves of midnight silk. Her eyes, no longer blazing, held something close to memory. "You returned," she said. "I had to," Zawadi answered, "because you didn't have to let me go." The mermaid tilted her head. Why would you thank the one who nearly ended you? Zawadi stepped closer. Because you were the only one honest with me. Everyone smiled but hid knives. You showed me the price and the truth. The mermaid sighed. Her voice turned low, almost human. Long ago, I was like you. A girl with hands full of trust. I fell in love with a man from the north. But his mother, a woman of power and envy, cursed me. Said I would live forever where I died. She looked down at the water. So here I stayed, for decades, watching love pass me by, watching daughters hold their mothers. And I held only silence. Her voice cracked, and so I punished. Not because I hated, but because I ached. Zawadi's throat tightened. You were betrayed, just like me. The mermaid looked at her again. Really looked. And for the first time, her smile was real. Perhaps that is why I let you go. You reminded me that pain isn't the only thing that lives forever. Love can too. Zawadi stepped to the edge, placed the bowl and the flower into the current. Then let this offering be not for protection, but for peace. The mermaid accepted it silently. Go now, Zawadi, she said. Live your life. Love deeply. Forget nothing. But don't let pain be the only story you tell. With that, she sank beneath the surface, and the river shimmered, not in threat, but in thanks. The sun that morning rose softer, as if even the sky knew something was about to change. Zawadi sat outside her family's hut, peeling sweet potatoes into a woven basket. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind, it wandered, back to the river, back to the whisper of the mermaid. Don't let pain be the only story you tell. She didn't know what that meant, not fully, but she knew it had weight. Just then, footsteps, not hurried, not clumsy, certain. She looked up, and her breath caught. A young man stood at the edge of the clearing, skin like polished earth, a cloak draped over his shoulder, eyes that smiled before his lips did. It was Ayo, the boy from the festival, the one who had laughed with her by the drums. But now, he looked different, not in face, in presence. Zawadi, he said, his voice low, steady. You remember me? She stood, brushing flour from her dress. Of course, you're Ayo, from across the river. He smiled and stepped closer. Then slowly, he reached up and removed the cloth from his shoulders. Beneath it, a golden clasp, a royal mark, the symbol of the House of Obadel. My name, he said, is Prince Ayodeji. I came to the festival in disguise, hoping to see my people as they truly are. And in doing so, I saw you. Zawadi's lips parted. You're a prince? And you, he said gently, are the girl who tamed a spirit with her heart. The village had gathered by now, whispering, watching. I have seen beauty before, Ayodeji continued. But never a soul like yours, brave enough to love again after betrayal, kind enough to return thanks where pain once lived. Zawadi, daughter of Bantu, will you be queen beside me? Silence. Then, her mother's gasp, her father's proud, trembling nod. Zawadi placed a hand to her chest, not in shock, in checking if her heart was truly still there. You saw me, she said, voice soft, when even my friends didn't. I felt you, he replied, before I ever knew your name. The villagers erupted, drums, cheers, and from somewhere in the trees, the little parrot sang again. This time, not a song of betrayal, but a melody of return, of redemption, and of a crown that had found its rightful home, not on a head, but in a heart. The wedding of Zawadi and Prince Ayodeji was set for the end of the moon, but before the drums, before the feasting, before the blessings, Zawadi had one request. I cannot begin a new life, she said, until we free the one still trapped in the old. Ayodeji understood, because love, true love, doesn't just lift one soul. It lifts all those in its shadow. And so the prince sent word to the chief priest of Obadele, a man older than memory, whose voice was said to speak in harmony with the gods. Together they gathered what was needed, a staff carved from the bone of a baobab tree, 7 white stones from the sacred hills, and a bowl filled with tears from a mother's prayer. The entire village of Bantu came, not just to witness, but to honor. The river Mzimu shimmered beneath the twilight, as if sensing that something sacred was about to unfold. The priest stepped forward. "Great Spirit of water and wound," he called. "We come not with demands, but with compassion." He drew ancient symbols in the dirt with his staff, and each one glowed, soft, golden, alive. "You were once betrayed," he continued, "but today, let the chains of yesterday break beneath the weight of mercy." The river stirred, not in anger, but in readiness. Zawadi stepped forward, holding a mirror carved from polished shell. "Look," she whispered into the waves, "not at your pain, but at your reflection." Slowly the mermaid rose, but this time her eyes were different. Not glowing, not burning, just human. She looked at the mirror and saw not a monster, not a curse, but the girl she used to be, the one who once believed in love. And as a single tear slipped from her eye, the river exploded in light. Gold, silver, blue like promise. The wind danced through the trees. The water spun upward, a spiral of grace. And then, the mermaid smiled, not with sorrow, with release. "Thank you," she said, "for reminding me who I was, before the wound." Her body shimmered and slowly dissolved into the river, not in pain, but in peace. The curse was gone. The water settled. The moon rose. And the river, finally, slept. The river that once whispered death now hummed a lullaby. Mzimu had changed. Its waters ran clearer, its winds danced lighter, and on its banks a village gathered, not to mourn, but to marry. The wedding of Zawadi and Prince Ayodeji was not just a celebration. It was a rebirth. Children wove garlands of wildflowers. Drummers lined the path. Women painted their arms in white clay, a symbol of protection, peace, and beginning again. Zawadi wore a gown dyed in sun and fire, threads of gold, beads of bone and coral. Her hair was wrapped in blue cloth, the same shade as the river when it forgave. Ayodeji stood waiting by the altar, carved from the root of the baobab tree. No crown on his head, no sword at his hip, just a boy in love, a king in spirit before title. As Zawadi walked the path toward him, old women ululated, long, high cries of joy that rippled through the trees. The parrot flew overhead, not singing secrets this time, but a melody of hope. The chief priest raised his hand. "Today, we witness a union not of power," he said, "but of purpose. A girl who walked through water, a boy who hid his crown to find truth. Together they will lead not with might, but with memory." Zawadi and Ayodeji turned to each other. No trembling, no doubt, only clarity. "Do you choose this path?" "I do," Ayodeji said, "not as a prince, but as a man who found his home in her heart." "I do," Zawadi whispered, "not because I was saved, but because I survived, and still believe." The crowd cheered, drums thundered, and as they kissed, a soft breeze rolled across the river, as if Mzimu itself had sighed in blessing. That night they danced, long past the moon's climb. Children fell asleep in their mother's arms. Old men sang songs they hadn't sung in years. And the river glowed, not with magic, but with the memory of a story that had ended and begun again. Years passed. Bantu changed. New huts were built. Old ones crumbled. Babies were born beneath mango trees. Elders returned to the soil they once sang upon. But some things remained. The river Mzimu, now calm, clear, respected. And in the center of the village a statue stood. Not of a king, not of a warrior, but of a girl, barefoot, with her hand outstretched, not in power, but in offering. Her name was carved beneath it, Zawadi, the one who crossed. Some say she became queen of many lands. Others say she taught children how to speak to rivers. But the truth? The real truth? Zawadi never ruled with fear. She ruled with memory. She built schools not just for books, but for stories, she said. "Tell your children the truth, not just of who hurt you, but of who helped you survive." And every year, on the day of her wedding, the village gathers by the river. They wear white. They bring offerings, not because they fear the water, but because they remember its lesson. That love is not loud, that sacrifice leaves ripples, and that no curse, no matter how deep, is stronger than a soul that chooses to forgive. So if you ever walk by a river and feel the wind wrap around your ankles, don't be afraid. Just listen. You might hear her voice, the girl who crossed and taught the river to love again. Some rivers take life, some give it back, but the ones that stay with you forever are the rivers that change you. The River of Testimony wasn't just a tale about betrayal or magic. It was about a girl who trusted, was broken, and still chose to believe. It was about parents who walked into death, not because they had power, but because they had love. And it was about a spirit, once cursed by pain, who found peace in the echo of kindness. If this story touched something in you, maybe a memory, maybe a wound, maybe hope, then don't just keep it. Share it, because someone out there is standing by their own river, wondering if it's too late to be forgiven, or to forgive. Subscribe to Tales of Black, the place where Black voices echo through history, healing, and myth. Turn on the bell, not for noise, but for the next quiet truth waiting to be told. And leave a comment below. What would you leave at the riverbank? What would you dare to cross for? We'll meet again in the next story, where legends rise and silence breaks.